Yes, I finally figured out how to put music in these videos. Welcome back to the channel, guys. It has been a couple of weeks. I've just been busy with some real life stuff. And today I wanted to provide a quick update as to how I plan on approaching the channel for the next couple of months, as well as talk about the decisions that were made for the Draft Champions League. So we'll start off with the quick update bits. I am currently working on the first league recap. That league finished up last week, and I'm currently working away at that recap bit. I do think that's going to take a while, mostly because stuff like editing isn't something I'm super comfortable with yet, but I want to kind of take my time, figure it out, and get it to a decent enough quality, so hopefully you guys are looking forward to that. In the meantime, I have joined another league, and I'm planning on doing that weekly. The reason for that is I think it's slightly easier for me, and is a consistent means of content. So expect the draft analysis for that in the next couple of days, hopefully. Depends on the schedule though. As well as this, I will be covering some other discussion topics around the SV metagame, as well as some more DCL related videos like this one. I have a few ideas that I want to kind of cover before the auction, mostly because I think that DCL is the biggest event for the draft we've seen on Showdown that takes place throughout the entire year, and I kind of want to celebrate that with a few bits. So without further ado, let's get into the actual meat of the conversation, being the 8th format for DCL III. So this took place on the Smokedown forums a couple of weeks ago, with the biggest debate being the decision around the 8th format. You see there is some other topics up for discussion. As you can see, the expansion of 10 slots, the increasing of managers, and new formats. But the big one was about what the 8th format would be. This has not been consistent throughout any of the previous DCLs, and it was made very clear that the flex slot that was used last year was not going to be kept. But let's rewind a bit and kind of talk about some of the previous old slots. So, in every event, there has been 3 SB, 1 SS, 1 USUM, 1 ORS, and 1 BGC slot. The 8th slot in the first rendition of DCL was a second SS slot. However, this was not well received, mostly due to the unbans that were in SS at the time under Snowland Draft, including Zamazenta Crown, Pure and Black with no Dragon Dance, and Spectrian. In my opinion, one of these things is not like the other, but I'm not really an SS player, so I can't comment. DCL II then introduced a flex slot, done in a slightly different way to how it is done in DPL. So the flex slot was universal across the every matchup in the championship. So weeks 1, 2, and 3 were 4S, USUM, and SS respectively. Week 4 was double VGC, meaning that every team needed to draft 2 VGC players to kind of cover themselves for that week. And weeks 5, 6, and 7 were the reverse order of weeks 1 to 3. This was a format that seemed to be well received at the time, and nothing was kind of said in immediate feedback. But it quickly became clear that people were unsure about the RNG aspects of it. A lot of the time coming down to when you matched up into certain teams and double up of a tier, it's just not suiting in terms of player matchups or matchups of teams and stuff like that. Which I guess is understandable. There was a debate earlier in the year of would VGC keep its slot. However, that died a death pretty quickly. VGC draft is in a very healthy position right now, and that is due to the success of Citrus Team Circuit, which got more signups than DPL this year. That's a fun fact. As well as Hopeless's success in his regional win, and shouting out draft process, and it just being a really healthy position for the format right now. So it became very clear that VGC was going nowhere. And people had very different opinions about this law. Tiers were thrown around such as ADV and DPT. However, for different reasons, they were both decided that those would not be the correct decision. giving them more time to flesh out as metagames and maybe be used in alternative tours, such as whatever the replacement for Drafting World Cup will be towards the end of this year, start next year. Then the double up of older gen slots was brought up, both SS and Usum. Usum due to it being a more popular format in terms of player base at this level, and SS due to its recent refinements, which have made the tier a lot more engaging and has a lot more people interested compared to what it used to. And shout out to Allison for that. SS Cup is starting soon in that regard, so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of gets seen on a wider community scale rather than just in an event like DCL. Then, we hit a bit of a weird point because nothing seemed to be agreed upon. So people were resorting to the idea of just go 4th SV. It's the safest thing. And then, my dumbass, realizing the 4SV was kind of boring, decided to have a think about the flex slot. Yeah, you can see me rambling about some stuff here. Let me just find the message I actually care about. Here we go. So this was my attempt at figuring out a flex slot. And this flex slot involved the use of home and away fixtures, meaning that one team would get to pick against another in a particular week. The reasoning behind this sort of model is can be seen by these. I forgot to propose you watch the Get Dance thing. I don't care. Actually, no. We'll move it up. It'll be fun. Anyways, so the idea was to have it so that each team got to pick their tier 3 times, their opponent picked against them 3 times, and the last week was a neutral week, which would be a 4th SV, because this would be the fairest system. This was not super well received, as the RNG aspects were kind of seen as being even stronger compared to the last one, even though it was also seen as having less RNG. There was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of how it was perceived. This was then followed up by Addison, who suggested a ban system, similar to what is used in fighting games such as Smash Bros. These days. And the decision there was to use my system in terms of home and away fixtures in quotations, and do it so that they would get to ban it here first. And then teams would keep banning until there's one tier left, and that is the tier that doubled for the different matchup. This was also well received, but it did also have its moments where people were unsure about it, mostly because they thought a lot of it would resort back to 4SV, just because it was the most neutral of the matchup, similar to like neutral stage choices. But it was an interesting idea. So at that point, it led to those 3 options being the main decisions for the 8th tier. And after a community poll, though, as you can see, there was a lot of debating going on. I'm not going to go through it all because we would be here all day, but I know L5 covered the first, and that's where you can see that the poll was released, and eventually it was decided that it would go to 4SV. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the biggest fan of 4SV, and I think a lot of that is because of it is a massive weight on SB, being more than all the old gens combined, and it leads to teams going in a very particular way that I'm not sure that I'm a fan of. It's also because of the way that SB seems to be currently operating, where it is getting that little bit slower of a metagame, more methodical, fatter, due to the existence of particular mons. You know, I've talked about Hydrapple on the channel already. There's 2 other ones that I imagine will come up in other topics I want to talk about. And I think a lot of people know what they are. Petra and Alpha. They're kind of the 2 biggies right now. So I'm not entirely sure what direction this is going to take. Like, I think DPL SV was definitely getting a lot more slower, a lot more boot spam, or just hazard stack plus have a good spin blocker. and just kind of win through formulaic means. But I could just be being a major skeptic, so it could go really well. But I think I would have preferred to have the option of seeing a top 10 Forest matchup versus, say, 2 guys in the top 50 claims. That's just my opinion, though. Like, I did accept that this was what was going to happen, because there was no suitable net for flex work. But it is what it is. And it's pretty bad really quickly. Captaincy signups go literally next week. It's kind of insane. Like, it felt like this event was so far away for ages, and now it's here. Obviously, it hasn't been dumped from its previous September time slot, that being due to SCL, and the debates around draft technically being a slot for that, which hasn't been 100% confirmed or denied, which kind of sucks. But it is what it is. I think DCL being in the summertime suits a lot of people more. It allows people to kind of put that bit more effort in, which I think is a good thing for an event of this caliber. As I stated earlier in the video, DCL is probably the biggest event in draft on the PS side of things. DPL obviously held that mantle for a while, but I think there was a shift, mostly last year. And while yes, I think DPL did a lot of things right this year, especially in terms of giving exposure to new blood, a lot of which did really well. I might actually cover that channel here, because there's a lot of players that went from DFL last year, or kind of not having a huge amount of team tour experience, getting drafted in DPL and doing really well. I'll kind of keep an eye on it, because I believe that might be a topic that a certain bigger channel might want to cover as well. So, it's on the list. So, ultimately I do think that DCL will be the pinnacle for this year, and I'm delighted to say that I will be back in some capacity. I'm not sure what capacity yet, but probably. I know I said this whole spiel last year about, oh, I'm done with DCL. I kind of knew that it wouldn't happen. And, well, yes, I'm glad I sat on DPL. I think DCL is that's just me. So I do plan on covering some other topics. I have a few ideas, and I want to get some guests on the channel too, which is also in the works. A lot of that's going to revolve around the idea of draft week and how to approach that, and how to make sure the teams are that bit different and you're kind of ahead of the curve for the rest of the metagame, as well as going into the idea of building in team tours and the process and how that's slightly different from prepping for a regular game. I'll also review some of my DCL games from last year. I know I've covered one of them on the channel already in the hacker video, but there is some much better games that I would like to cover. So I hope you're all looking forward to that, and if people have any more suggestions of what to kind of cover before the auction, let me know. Anything's on the table except for captain, but that's not much. That's shots. Look. But yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you all kind of enjoyed this slightly different vibe of video. I also hope that you enjoy actually me finding a way to put background music in, and hopefully after the audio mixing on this right, I'm using a different editing software now. Under the recommendation of my good friend Uzi. Thank you to him for saying that. I hope in a million years ago. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed, and I shall catch you in a few days for my draft analysis. Peace.